Vera Hale walked across the training yard of Crython 7's frontier base with slow, steady steps, her eyes fixed on the ground in front of her. The morning wind carried metallic dust through the open space, brushing against the cracked plates of her old battle gear. The armor looked like it had been pulled from a scrapyard. Deep scorch marks ran across her shoulder guard, and the surface was rough where the metal had been patched more than once. Every clank of the joints was louder than the confident footsteps of the other recruits. The other trainees had already formed their squads, talking loudly, laughing, and adjusting their advanced exo-armor with its smooth lines and glowing interface strips. Unlike Vera's gear, theirs was polished and modern, made from fresh alloy that reflected the rising sun. When they saw her approaching, the laughter grew louder. One of the Sarnak recruits, a tall reptilian soldier with sharp brown scales, pointed at her armor and hissed out a mocking comment. Someone else added a joke about humans not being able to afford proper gear. Vera heard every word, but she simply continued walking with a calm face. She didn't look at them. She didn't answer. She didn't stop. She just kept breathing slowly, counting each breath like she had learned long ago. The mocking voices followed her until she reached her place in the formation. Even then, the whispers didn't stop. They asked each other how long she would last. They joked that her armor would fall apart before the battle even began. They wondered if she had found it lying somewhere in the trash behind the barracks. Vera stayed silent. Silence was easier than explaining the truth. Silence hurt less than repeating the story she carried. The mission briefing began soon after. Commander Velos, a tall Zelfman officer with silver-blue skin, stood in front of the battalion. His voice was sharp, calm, and powerful. He explained the situation on Crython 7. A patrol team had disappeared near the metallic forest just beyond the ridge. The battalion had to move quickly, search for survivors, and discover the cause. The commander emphasized the danger. The electromagnetic storms made scanners unreliable. The terrain shifted. Hostile creatures adapted fast. Everyone needed to stay alert. As the briefing ended, the soldiers checked their weapons and armor. Vera quietly tightened the straps of her battle gear. When she touched the cracked shoulder guard, she paused for a moment. Her fingers brushed the rough edge where the metal had once broken apart under intense pressure. A faint symbol, half-burned and half-scratched, was still visible inside the plate. She lowered her hand before anyone noticed her looking at it. The squads marched out in straight lines. The forest loomed in front of them like a metallic maze, its silver trees twisting upward and humming softly with electric pulses. The ground sparkled with mineral dust, and the air flickered every few minutes as energy waves passed through. Vera's squad walked together at first, but as they entered deeper into the forest, the teasing started again. The Sarnak soldier nudged her from behind and asked how many battles her armor had already lost. Another recruit wondered if she planned to survive by hiding behind a tree. Vera didn't answer. She only focused on her breathing, her footsteps, the sound of the forest around them. She scanned the shadows and listened for movement. She knew that the silence of this place was too perfect, too unnatural. They were halfway into the forest when the first tremor hit. The ground shook violently, forcing the squad to spread out. A second tremor followed, deeper and more powerful, splitting the group across two different ridges. Trees collapsed. Dust clouds rose. Vera rolled behind a rock formation to avoid falling debris, and when the shaking stopped, she looked around. Only 4 other recruits were near her. The rest were on the other side of a newly formed ravine. The Sarnak soldier hissed in frustration. Another recruit panicked, shouting that the scanners were dead. Vera tried her communicator, but all she heard was static. She steadied herself and checked her surroundings. Something was wrong. The forest had grown too quiet again. She felt a deep pressure in the air, a warning she couldn't explain. Then the ambush came. Dark shapes burst through the metallic, trees like shadows breaking free from the surface. They moved fast with long limbs and razor-thin claws that vibrated with corrosive energy. Their eyes glowed a sickly green, and their screeches ripped through the forest. The squad barely had time to raise their weapons. One creature lunged at the recruit closest to Vera, breaking through his shield with terrifying ease. Vera grabbed his arm and pulled him aside just as the creature struck again. Her cracked shoulder guard took the hit, absorbing a blow strong enough to break fresh alloy. The impact pushed her back, but she held her ground. The recruits stared at her in shock. Her broken gear wasn't breaking. It was holding another creature charged from the right side. Vera moved without thinking. Her body reacted the way it had been trained long ago. She sidestepped, blocked with her arm, and swung her weapon upward to force the creature back. The recruits watched, confused and panicking. Their advanced armor was corroding under the enemy's attacks, but Vera's old gear stood strong, resisting damage that should have torn it apart. The Sarnik soldier shouted for everyone to fall back. His voice trembled, revealing fear he had never shown before. The recruits tried to retreat, but the creatures circled them, cutting off escape routes. Vera stepped forward again, positioning herself between the creatures and her squad. She didn't shout. She didn't panic. She simply moved with calm precision, watching every motion the creatures made. Her armor absorbed hit after hit, sparks flying with each impact. But she didn't fall. A creature jumped toward the smallest recruit in the group. Vera moved faster than anyone expected. She threw herself between them, letting the creature strike her shoulder guard again. The metal groaned loudly and cracked deeper, but it didn't break. She pushed the creature back with a heavy blow that sent it stumbling. The recruits stared at her. The girl they had mocked. The girl they had laughed at. The girl with broken armor. She was the only one keeping them alive. Vera turned her head, slightly, and spoke for the first time since entering the forest. Her voice was steady and controlled. She told them to move toward the ridge behind them. She explained the path. She explained how to avoid the unstable ground. She gave simple orders, and for the first time, they listened without arguing. Together, they moved as she directed. The creatures pushed harder, but Vera blocked each attack with her body, using the cracked armor like a shield. The recruits followed her, step by step, realizing slowly that her quiet strength was the only reason they were still breathing. They reached the ridge and formed a defensive line. Vera stood at the front. The creatures circled again, screeching louder. Sensing their prey had nowhere else to run, Vera lifted her arm, the cracked shoulder plate catching the dim forest light. She braced herself for the next attack. The recruits behind her watched in silence, their earlier joking replaced with something new. Confusion, respect, fear, wonder. They didn't understand how she was still standing. They didn't understand how her broken armor survived hits that should have shattered it. They didn't understand why she never complained, never responded to their mocking, never tried to explain herself, but they were beginning to understand one thing: Vera Hale was not weak, and the broken battle gear they had laughed at was not what they thought it was. As the creatures prepared for their next attack, Vera planted her feet firmly. The recruits tightened their grips on their weapons. For the first time, they followed her lead with complete trust. The battle was far from over, but something had already changed. Vera was no longer the girl with damaged armor. She was the one standing strong when everyone else was falling apart, and deep in her heart, she held the memory of where her gear truly came from and why she could never abandon it. No matter how many people mocked her for it, she whispered a quiet promise only she could hear. Then stepped forward as the next wave of creatures charged. The ridge trembled under their boots as the creatures circled below, their claws scraping against the metallic stone. Vera stood in front, breathing steadily while the recruits behind her fought to control their panic. The air shifted with every distant pulse of the forest, and the strange hum of the metallic trees felt like a warning that something even worse was waiting deeper inside. The creatures screeched again. Their green eyes glowed brighter before they charged up the slope, moving so fast that the recruits flinched backward. Vera stepped forward instead. She met the first creature head-on, raising her cracked shoulder guard to block its strike. The impact sent sparks flying, and the creature recoiled in confusion when its claw didn't break through her armor. The recruits finally fired their weapons, beams of energy lighting up the ridge. The shots slowed the creatures but didn't stop them for long. Vera understood this fight wasn't about winning. It was about surviving long enough to escape. she shouted for the squad to stay together and not spread out. Her voice carried authority none of them had expected. They listened instantly, gathering behind her, forming a tighter line. Shield. Vera looked away for a long time. The forest hummed around them. The metallic leaves shifted. The air trembled with quiet energy. The recruits waited, confused and tense. After a long silence, Vera finally spoke. Her voice was soft, steady, and filled with a sadness none of them expected. She said yes. The recruits stared at her as if she had just told them she carried a piece of the stars. Vera took a slow breath and continued. She explained that many years ago, during the siege of Helios Gate, her father had fought until his shield shattered in battle. It had saved thousands, but at the cost of his life. The remaining fragments of the shield were collected by a small team, including an engineer who had been close to him. That engineer had forged a few pieces of armor from the surviving fragments. Not for display. Not to be sold? Only for her. She had been a child then. Too young to understand why her father never came home. The Sarnak recruit asked why she wore it into battle instead of protecting it, or keeping it somewhere safe. Vera touched the cracked guard softly with her fingers. She said it was the only part of her father she had left. She said she didn't want it locked away. She wanted it where it had always belonged, on the battlefield protecting others. The recruits looked down. Shame settled over them. The same armor they had mocked was the last piece of a hero they all admired. The metallic forest suddenly rumbled, cutting off the moment. The creatures were returning. Their screeches rose through the air, sharp and angry. The recruits quickly formed a circle around Vera, for the first time wanting to protect her rather than ridicule her, but the creatures didn't attack right away. They moved between the trees, their glowing eyes fixed on Vera alone. They hissed and clicked with strange emotion, almost as if they recognized something. Their steps were slower, controlled, and filled with purpose. The Sarnak recruit whispered that this was not normal. Something was different about the way the creatures behaved. Vera narrowed her eyes. She could feel it too. The creatures moved in circles around them, staying in the shadows but never breaking eye contact. Their screeches grew deeper, almost echoing through the forest. Vera suddenly understood something. She had tried not to think about for years. These creatures had fought her father, not these exact ones, but the same species. Her father's final battle had been against their kind. They had faced Captain Halle, the man with the unbreakable shield. They had seen his strength. They had felt his endurance. And now, when Vera stood before them, wearing the last pieces of that shield, they recognized the energy, the style, the stance. They recognized the legacy. The smallest creature stepped forward, sniffing the air, its eyes fixed on the cracked shoulder guard. It screeched a long rising call. The other creatures responded with the same sound. The Sarnak recruit whispered that they were sending a message before anyone could react. A deeper, heavier rumble echoed through the forest. The ground shook once, twice, then a massive shape emerged from the shadows. A towering creature, nearly 3 times the size of the others, pushed aside the metallic branches as it stepped forward. Its claws glowed brighter, and thick armor plates covered its body. The Hive Queen, the recruits froze. Even the bravest among them took a step back. The Queen stared at Vera with slow, intelligent movements, her eyes scanning the broken armor piece. She let out a low, deep growl that vibrated through the trees. Vera lifted her weapon and stood her ground. The Queen rushed forward with a speed none of them expected. Vera blocked the first strike with her armored shoulder. The impact was so strong that the cracked plate broke further, sending pieces of metal scattering. But it still didn't shatter completely. The recruits fired their weapons, trying to distract the Queen. The smaller creatures charged at them, forcing them into a chaotic fight. But something had changed. The recruits stuck together this time. They moved with purpose. They followed Vera's commands without hesitation. Vera fought the Queen with everything she had. The creature was strong and precise, its attacks coordinated and filled with old hatred. But Vera didn't back down. She moved the way her father had taught her in old training videos, calm, sharp, focused. Every strike she made echoed the style of Captain Halle. The queen screeched in frustration as Vera blocked another hit, using the last intact part of the shield fragment. Sparks flew. The metal groaned. The recruits shouted her name, telling her to fall back, but Vera refused. The queen lunged again. Vera dodged and struck its face, leaving a deep cut. The queen roared. The ground shook. The recruits fired again, pushing the smaller creatures away. Vera stepped back for a moment, breathing hard. Sweat dripped down her forehead. Her armor was damaged. Her weapon was getting heavier. But her eyes were steady. She remembered her father's words. Words she had repeated to herself every day. Protect those who can't protect themselves. She tightened her grip and stepped forward again. The queen charged one final time. Vera met her head-on. The impact sent shockwaves through the ridge. Vera slammed the broken shield piece into the queen's weak spot near its chest. The queen stumbled, screeching in pain. The recruits fired together, striking the queen with everything they had. The queen fell. The forest went silent. The smaller creatures backed away, hissing softly, then disappeared into the shadows. The recruits stood frozen, breathing heavily, staring at Vera. They didn't know what to say. They didn't know what words could possibly match what they had just witnessed. Vera looked at the cracked armor plate, now hanging loosely from her shoulder. Only a small piece of the golden metal remained. Attached, Rian stepped forward, slowly, and whispered the words everyone was thinking. She wasn't just a recruit, she was her father's legacy. And for the first time, they truly understood who she was. The creatures charged with a roar that shook the metallic trees around them. Their claws sparked with corrosive energy as they rushed forward, hungry for the target they had marked. But this time, the recruits did not stumble back or hide behind the rocks. They tightened their formation around Vera, their weapons raised, even though many of them still flickered with unstable power. Vera stood at the center of the circle, watching every movement with quiet focus. Her heart pounded against her chest, but her breathing stayed steady. She lifted her arm slightly, letting the cracked shoulder plate reflect the faint glow of the forest. The creatures hesitated for a brief second, as if the memory of that emblem stirred something inside them. Then the fight began. The first creature leaped onto the ridge, landing with a heavy thud. The Sonic soldier met it with a swing of his weapon, knocking it back. Another creature went for the smallest recruit, but two others stepped in front of him, pushing the creature back before it could strike. Their fear was still there, but now it lived beside something stronger, a will to protect. Vera moved among them, guiding their positions, warning them when a creature approached from behind the trees, and blocking the strongest attacks with her armor. She fought not as a rookie struggling to survive, but as someone born and trained for moments like this. The creatures struck harder and faster, their numbers growing with each wave. Their eyes glowed brighter, and their screeches echoed across the forest. But the squad did not break. They followed Vera's voice, her movements, her understanding of the enemy. After several minutes of fighting, the creatures pulled back again, forming a circle just beyond the ridge. Their bodies trembled with agitation as if they were waiting for something. Vera narrowed her eyes. She sensed a shift in the air, a new presence approaching. The ground beneath them pulsed with energy. The metallic surface vibrated as something large moved in the darkness. The recruits looked around nervously, gripping their weapons tighter. From the shadows stepped a creature larger than the rest, taller than any soldier there, with thick armored plates and long claws glowing with a deeper green light. The forest went silent as the creature moved closer. Even the smaller creatures bowed their heads. The Hive Guardian. Vera felt a familiar chill run through her. She had read about Guardians, elite members of the Hive, built to defend the Queen and hunt threats the Hive considered legendary. Her father had fought creatures like this in his final battle. The Guardian's eyes locked onto her armor. It screeched, a sound filled with memory and rage. The recruits flinched, but Vera stood still. The Guardian recognized the remnants of the shield it once faced. It recognized the strength that had once pushed back its entire swarm. The Guardian charged. Vera pushed the recruits aside and raised her arm. The impact shook her entire body, knocking her back several steps. The cracked shoulder plate vibrated violently, threatening to break apart. Pain shot through her arm, but she held her ground. The Guardian roared, trying to push through the barrier, but Vera pushed back with everything she had. Her legs shook. The recruits scrambled to attack, firing whatever power remained in their weapons. Their shots hit the Guardian's armor, slowing it but not stopping it. Vera managed to twist her body, redirecting the Guardian's force to the side. The Guardian stumbled and crashed into a metallic tree, sending sparks flying. The squad quickly repositioned around Vera. Forming a protective line again, the Guardian rose. Angrier than before, the Sarnic soldier whispered that they could not fight it head-on. Another recruit said they needed to retreat, but Vera shook her head. The Guardian would not let them run. It wanted her, and it would not stop until she was dead. Vera stepped forward, her hand tightening around her weapon. She looked at the recruits and told them to trust her. She told them to follow her instructions exactly. They nodded without hesitation. She described a method her father had once used in similar battles of formation designed to contain a stronger enemy by using the environment. The squad spread out, taking positions around the ridge so the Guardian would have limited space to move. The Guardian charged again, but this time the squad was ready. They moved in perfect sync, blocking its path, distracting it, and forcing it to turn its back toward Vera. She climbed onto a rock formation and jumped, landing on the Guardian's back and slamming her cracked armor piece against the creature's neck. The armor absorbed the creature's corrosive energy, glowing faintly. The Guardian screeched in pain and threw her off, but the blow had weakened it. The recruits attacked together, driving the Guardian back toward the canyon. The Guardian roared again, calling reinforcements. Creatures emerged from every direction, surrounding the clearing. The squad tightened their formation, fear rising again, but Vera stepped forward once more. She lifted her arm, letting the emblem inside the cracked plate reflect what little light remained in the forest. She whispered a quiet promise to her father and prepared to lead the fight. The creatures hesitated again, but hunger and instinct eventually drowned their fear. They charged. The squad fought with everything they had. They were exhausted, bleeding, and their armor was failing. But they held the line. Vera moved like a force of nature, blocking attacks, pushing enemies away, and guiding her squad with calm instructions. Together, they slowly retreated toward a narrow opening between two metallic cliffs. Vera called out the final phase of the plan. Once the squad entered the narrow passage, the creatures would be forced to approach in single file. Losing their advantage, the squad ran into the opening and Vera stayed at the front, blocking the entrance. The Guardian charged one last time, but the combined fire of the squad hit it from all angles. It collapsed with a roar that shook the canyon walls. The smaller creatures grew restless and confused. Without their Guardian, their coordination faltered. Vera took the chance to push them back. The squad followed, and soon the creatures retreated into the forest. Silence returned. The recruits collapsed onto the metallic ground, breathing hard. Some laughed from relief. Others wiped tears from their eyes. They looked at Vera with awe instead of confusion. None of them saw her as weak anymore. The Sarnac soldier walked up to her, staring at the cracked shoulder plate. He said they were sorry. All of them. They said they did not know what her armor meant. They did not know who she was. Vera didn't answer right away. She looked at her armor, touching the emblem that once belonged to her father. She said it didn't matter what they thought before. What mattered was that they survived. As they prepared to move again, the ground pulsed gently, as if warning them. They were not safe yet. The Hive Queen was still out there, and she would not ignore the death of her guardian. Vera took a deep breath. She told the squad they needed to keep moving. They needed to reach the extraction point before the Queen awakened the full hive. The recruits nodded, following her without question. For the first time, Vera did not walk behind them. She walked at the front, and the squad followed their new leader into the heart of the metallic forest. Ready to face whatever came next, he woke before the others, his body shaking with the memory of alarms echoing through steel walls. Raina had spent most of the night staring at the dim ceiling of the barracks, listening to the quiet breaths of soldiers around him. Sleep refused to stay long, slipping from him like sand, leaving only flashes of yesterday's chaos and the weight of what was coming. The truth about her broken gear, the reason behind the shame she carried alone, was heavier now than before. He stood and stepped quietly into the corridor. Cold air brushed against his skin, and the metallic floor hummed under his boots. He moved slowly, trying not to think too much, but his mind kept going back to the same moments. The training yard. The laughter. The way they pointed at her armor and called her weak. The way she kept silent. The way she walked away. He wrapped his arms around himself and stared down the long hallway. Somewhere outside these walls, the enemy ships were regrouping. Somewhere on the other side of the station, people still whispered about her. They spoke without knowing anything. They judged without asking. They didn't understand what it meant to carry a piece of the dead. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly. He wished the others could see what he saw in her, but maybe they were not ready. Maybe the truth would crush them. Maybe they would never accept it until it exploded in front of them. The morning bell echoed, pulling him back. He turned and walked to the mess hall. When he entered, soldiers sat scattered across the room. Some laughed. Some complained about drills. But when Rina walked in behind him, the room went silent for a moment. Eyes followed her. Whispers rose. Rina kept her face calm, but he saw her shoulders tense. She walked to the corner and sat down alone like she always did. She moved slowly, carefully. She rarely touched her broken gear anymore, but he knew she carried the damaged piece with her. Not on her body, but close enough to feel its weight. He walked to her table and sat down. She looked at him, surprised but grateful. "You don't have to sit alone," he said softly. "I'm fine," she answered. Though her voice said the opposite, "They still talk," he added. "I know." He waited, letting the silence settle. "Does it bother you?" he asked. "No," she replied, but her eyes did not agree. "They're just scared," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Of me?" "Of what they don't understand." Her fingers tightened slightly around her cup. Before he could say more, Commander Vale entered the hall. The chatter died instantly. The commander walked straight to Rina's table and stopped. "Cadet Rina," Vale said. "Follow me. Both of you." Rina stiffened. He stood quickly, unsure what the commander wanted. They followed Vale through the hall and into a quiet briefing room. The door shut behind them. Vale turned to face them. "You both will join an urgent patrol," he said. "A reconnaissance team went missing last night. We received a weak distress signal only minutes ago." Rina frowned. "Why us?" Vale looked directly at her. "Because you have something the others don't." She said nothing. He stepped closer. "Because you survived what killed your captain?" he continued. Rina's breath caught. The words hit like a heavy blow. He stepped forward. "She doesn't need..." "Quiet," Vale ordered. He fell silent. The commander's eyes softened for a moment. "There is no shame in being the last survivor. But you carry the only remaining piece of Captain Arlen's shield. The one that held off the enemy long enough to save the rest of the squad." Rina looked away. Her jaw tightened. Vale continued. "The damaged shield plating you wear is not a sign of weakness. It is the reason anyone escaped alive." He felt something move inside him. A slow burn of anger and pride. Rina whispered, "I don't want them to think I'm hiding behind her memory." Vale stepped closer. "You are not hiding. You are honoring it. Now suit up. The patrol launches in 20 minutes. Rina nodded, though her hands trembled. They left the room together. The corridor seemed longer, heavier. The station lights flickered and distant engines hummed. Rina walked quietly beside him, but he could sense the storm inside her. "You okay?" he asked if she shook her head. "No," he nodded. "Good, means you care." She glanced at him, confused. "I don't think bravery means not feeling anything," he continued. "I think it means doing what you must despite the fear." She looked down at her hands, then straight ahead. "Maybe." When they reached the armory, she paused. Rows of weapons and armor gleamed under cold lights. She approached her locker slowly. Inside lay her suit worn, scratched, and missing the familiar broken plate she once carried. The armory crew had removed it for repair. Or maybe for testing. She didn't know. He watched her quietly. "You miss it," he said. She did not answer, but her silence was enough. They geared up. Rhina adjusted her straps carefully, checking every connection twice. He secured his gear quickly and stepped beside her. "You don't need that broken piece to prove anything," he said. She shook her head. "It's not proof. It's a reminder." Before he could respond, Vale's voice echoed through the speakers. "Team 3, report to Bay 6? They moved quickly. The hangar buzzed with activity. Mechanics rushed between ships. Engines rumbled. The patrol vessel, a small craft with dark armor and narrow wings, waited for them. Inside, the pilot greeted them with a nod. "We leave in 2 minutes. Strap in." They took their seats. The cockpit lights dimmed, and the engines grew louder. The ship lifted smoothly, leaving the hangar behind. Stars stretched outside the window, scattered across the dark. Rhina stared at them without blinking. "You've been quiet," he said. "I'm thinking," she replied. "About what?" She hesitated. "About the patrol that disappeared. About the captain. About everything." He nodded slowly. "Whatever happens, I'm with you." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment her eyes softened. "Thank you," she whispered. The silence that followed felt calmer. Not peaceful, but steady. Then the ship jolted. The pilot cursed. "We're picking up movement." Unidentified craft at 2 o'clock. Alarms began to buzz. Rhina and he exchanged a quick look. "Strap in tight," the pilot warned. "This is not a drill." The ship spun sharply. Lights flickered. A shadow crossed in front of them. The enemy. He felt the weight of fear rise again. But beside him, Rhina leaned forward, eyes sharp. The pilot shouted, "Incoming fire!" The ship trembled violently. Rhina whispered under her breath, "Captain Arlen, give me strength." The enemy ship fired again, and part of him realized something. Rhina was not afraid anymore. She was ready. He felt the air thicken as the enemy ship drew closer. Lights flashed red inside the patrol vessel. The pilot tried to stabilize the ship, but the engines whined under the pressure. Rhina tightened her straps and leaned forward, her eyes sharp and alert. The fear that once shook her now seemed small compared to the strength building inside her. She breathed slowly and waited for the next impact. The enemy fired again. The patrol vessel shook violently, throwing him against his seat. Rhina gripped the armrests tightly but did not panic. The pilot shouted something about shields failing, but the alarms drowned his words. The ship tilted, then spun, and darkness filled the windows. The pilot managed to bring the ship under control, but barely. Smoke drifted from the panels. Sparks popped near the cockpit. The pilot hit several switches and cursed under his breath. "We lost our primary thruster," he said. "We need to land on the nearest surface before we fall out of the sky." Rhina checked her gear calmly. "Where can we land?" The pilot pointed to the screen. A small moon covered with jagged rocks and thin dust appeared. "There, it's close enough. But the enemy might follow." He exchanged a quick look with Rhina. They both understood the danger. "Do it," she said. The descent was rough. The ship rattled like it would break apart. Fire streaked past the windows as they entered the moon's thin atmosphere. The pilot struggled to control the angle. Rhina's fingers dug into her armrests. The ship struck the ground, bounced, and slid across sharp rocks before finally stopping. Silence followed. Dust settled around the hull. The engines hissed and shut down. He unstrapped himself quickly and checked his limbs. "You okay?" Rhina nodded. "You?" "I'm good." The pilot groaned from the front, clutching his shoulder. "My arm is hurt, but I can still walk." Rhina moved forward and helped him stand. They exited the ship slowly. The moon's surface was cold and silent. Thin air brushed against their suits. A wide valley stretched ahead, surrounded by tall cliffs that cast long shadows. Rhina scanned the horizon. "We need cover. The enemy might land soon." They walked quickly, searching for shelter. Rocks crunched under their boots. The silence was heavy, pressing against them. He kept glancing at Rhina, noticing how focused she looked. She didn't waste a single movement. She moved as if she had done this 100 times. A narrow cave appeared on the side of a cliff. Rhina examined it before motioning them inside. The interior was dark but deep enough to hide them. The pilot leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. "We need to send a distress signal. Command must know where we are." He took out the emergency beacon from his pack. "I'll activate it now." Rhina placed a hand on his arm. "Not yet. The enemy could track it. We wait until we know where they are." He nodded slowly. She was right. Suddenly, a faint vibration rippled through the ground. Rhina stepped toward the entrance and peered outside. A shadow passed overhead. The enemy ship glided slowly above the valley, scanning the surface. He whispered, "They're searching for us." Rhina didn't blink. "They'll find the crash site soon." The enemy ship circled again, then descended toward the broken patrol vessel. The pilot clenched his jaw. "If they check inside, they'll know we escaped." Rhina lowered her voice. "Then we move deeper." They followed her through a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the cave. The path twisted several times before opening into a large chamber filled with strange glowing stones. Blue light shimmered across the walls. He looked around, amazed. "What is this place?" Rhina touched a stone gently. "Some kind of mineral. Maybe natural energy." The pilot leaned over one of the stones. "We need to rest, even for a moment. They might not find us immediately." Rhina hesitated, then nodded. They sat down near the wall. The glow cast soft shadows across their faces. He noticed how tired Rhina looked beneath her calm expression. "You're thinking again," he said softly. She exhaled slowly. "I always think about Captain Arlen." Rhina did not answer right away. She stared at the glowing stones, her face still. "She saved me," Rhina finally said. "Everyone thinks I survived because I hid behind her. They think I ran. They think my broken gear is a mark of shame." He shook his head. "That's not true." "She gave me her shield," Rhina whispered. She was already wounded. "She pressed her shield into my hands and told me to keep moving. I did. I kept running. But she stayed behind." The chamber grew silent. "She fought alone," Rhina said. "Against all of them. She kept firing until the end. I heard her last breath in my cums. I couldn't help her." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "She chose to protect you. She trusted you to live." Rhina closed her eyes. "But I don't know if I deserved it." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "You did, and you still do." Before she could respond, a sudden boom echoed from the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling. Rhina stood instantly. They found the ship. The pilot struggled to his feet. "If they track us here, they will," she said. "We have to move." They rushed toward the opposite side of the chamber, where another tunnel led further into the cave system. As they entered, the ground shook again. Voices and heavy footsteps echoed from behind them. "They're inside," he whispered. Rhina moved faster. The tunnel grew tighter, forcing them to duck under low rocks. The distant voices grew clearer. Then they reached a dead end. A tall stone wall blocked their path. The pilot cursed softly. "We're trapped." He felt panic rising. The footsteps behind them grew louder. Rhina stepped forward and placed her hand on the stone wall. Her fingers traced a faint pattern etched into the surface. "This isn't natural," she said. He frowned. "What do you mean?" "This wall was shaped." "By someone?" "Long ago." She pressed her hand against the glowing mineral she carried in her pack. The stone in the wall began to shimmer, reacting to the mineral. The ground buzzed beneath them. He stared. "How?" Rhina's eyes widened. "Energy. It's responding to energy." The wall slowly slid open, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. They stepped inside just as shadows appeared in the tunnel behind them. Rhina hit a switch near the entrance, and the wall sealed shut again. They stood in complete silence. The chamber was wide, filled with old machines covered in dust. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the floor. Rhina looked around slowly. "This place. Whoever lived here was advanced." He swallowed. "Do you think it's safe?" No, she said, but it's better than being caught. The pilot carefully examined the panel. Some of this machinery still works. Maybe we can use it? Rhina moved toward the center of the room. A large circular platform sat there, humming with old energy. She placed her hand on it. The platform lit up. A bright pulse shot across the chamber. The entire room awakened. He stumbled back. Rhina, what did you do? She stepped back slowly, eyes wide. I don't know. Machines flickered to life. Symbols on the wall glowed. The hum grew louder. And then a projection appeared above the platform, a tall figure made of light. Not human. They froze. The figure spoke in a calm, ancient voice. Welcome, warrior. Rhino whispered. It's talking to me. He felt a chill run down his spine. The figure continued. You carry the mark of a shield bearer. The one who protects. The one who stands in the final moment? Rhina swallowed hard. I'm not a shield bearer. The figure glowed brighter. You are now. The chamber shook again as enemy footsteps approached. The hidden door. Rhina looked at him. He looked back. Their choice was clear. Whatever this place was, whatever power had awakened. It was now in her hands, and she had no time left to doubt herself. The chamber trembled as the enemy closed in. Dust drifted from the ceiling, and the rumbling footsteps grew louder from the other side of the sealed stone wall. Rhina stood still for a moment, staring at the glowing figure in front of her. She tried to control her breathing, but her heart shook with every beat. The ancient figure watched her with silent patience, its golden outline pulsing gently in the dim chamber. He stepped closer to her. Rhina, what do we do? She didn't know. She didn't even know what this place was. She didn't understand why the figure spoke only to her. She didn't know why her presence here awakened this power. But something inside her told her to listen. The glowing figure raised its hand. Shield bearer, you carry the memory of sacrifice. You carry the mark of protection. The one before you gave her final strength, so you may stand here now. Rhina swallowed hard. Captain Arlen's face flashed in her mind, brave, steady, determined. The captain had pressed the broken shield into her hands, blood dripping from her armor. She remembered the captain's words. She remembered her last smile. She whispered, What do you want me to do? The figure turned slightly, revealing a large pedestal that she hadn't noticed before. At its center was a circular slot shaped exactly like the broken shield plate she once carried. He saw it too. Rhina, your gear. The piece they removed from your armor. Do you think? She took a deep breath. It wants the shield. The pilot limped toward them, clutching his injured arm. But the shield piece is on the patrol ship. It's outside? Near the enemy. A sharp explosion echoed from the tunnel. The enemy had reached the cave. Their voices became clearer, harsh, metallic, determined. Rhina clenched her jaw. Time was running out. We need the shield piece, she said. Without it, this place stays dormant. He shook his head. If we go back out there, she looked at him with steady eyes. If we don't, we all die. And whatever this place holds stays buried. The glowing figure added, The shield bearer stands in the path of danger. It is the way of your kind. A strange warmth spread through Rhina's chest. She didn't know if it was courage or fear, but she stepped forward. I'm going, she said. He grabbed her arm. Not alone. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, together. The pilot tried to stand, but Rhina shook her head. You stay here. You're injured. And someone must guard this place. The pilot didn't argue. He rested against the wall, his face pale, Rhina, and he approached the sealed stone wall. The glowing figure raised its hand, and the hidden door slowly parted. A narrow opening appeared, cold air rushed in. Voices echoed from the tunnel. Rhina looked at him. Ready? He took a deep breath. Let's go. They slipped out quietly, moving through the tight passageway. The tunnel twisted, leading them back toward the entrance chamber. Enemy lights flickered ahead. Shadows moved. Rhina signaled him to stop. 3 enemy soldiers stood near the opening, scanning the ground. Rhina ducked behind a rock. Her breathing slowed. Her mind sharpened. He whispered, "There's too many." Rhina shook her head. "We don't need to fight them all. Just slip past." They waited until the soldiers turned their backs, then moved silently along the wall. Rhina's steps were steady, controlled. She guided him around the shadows and slipped through the broken rocks. As they approached the cave entrance, a loud roar filled the air. Enemy engines. The large enemy ship hovered near the crash site. Rhina's eyes narrowed. "We need to move fast." They ran, crouching low, using the rocks as cover. Dust and smoke filled the air. The broken patrol ship lay ahead, half buried in debris. The door hung open. And there, in the dirt, lying near the entrance of the wrecked ship, the broken shield plate. Rhina sprinted toward it. Just as she reached out, her hand a shot exploded beside her. She dove behind a rock. He slid beside her, breathing hard. The enemy soldiers had spotted them. Rhina tightened her jaw. "Cover me." He nodded without hesitation. "Go," she ran again. Shots hit the ground around her, sending dust flying. He fired back, forcing the enemy to take cover. Rhina reached the shield piece and grabbed it tightly. It pulsed faintly, reacting to her touch. She turned. Just as a soldier charged toward her, without thinking, she raised the broken shield plate. The soldier swung his weapon, and the shield piece absorbed the blow. A shockwave burst out, knocking the soldier backward. Rhina stared at the glowing crack along the shield piece. He shouted, "Rhina, move!" She nodded and ran back toward him. Together they rushed to the tunnel entrance, enemy fire chasing their steps. Rocks exploded behind them. They reached the hidden doorway. Just as the pilot triggered the mechanism from the inside, the door slid open. They jumped inside. The stone wall sealed shut. Blocking out the enemy, Rhina collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. The pilot helped her stand. "You got it," he whispered. She nodded and held out the shield piece. The glowing figure watched silently. Rhina walked to the pedestal. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the broken shield plate into the circular slot. The entire chamber shook. Light shot upward from the pedestal. The machines roared to life. Symbols glowed bright across the walls. Energy filled the air. Humming like a heartbeat, the glowing figure raised its arms. "Shield-bearer, you awaken the legacy of the Guardians. The power of protection flows through your spirit. The weight of sacrifice strengthens your path." Rhina stepped back. The energy formed a sphere around the pedestal. The broken shield plate lifted into the air. Light wrapped around it, reshaping it, repairing it, creating something new, a completed shield, sleek, glowing. Strong took shape in the center of the room. The shield floated toward Rhina. She hesitated, then reached out. When her fingers touched the shield, a surge of warmth rushed through her. Her vision flashed. She saw Captain Arlen standing before her. Smiling proudly, Rhina whispered, "I'm sorry I couldn't save you." The captain's voice echoed softly, "You were never meant to save me. You were meant to save them." Then the vision faded. Rhina opened her eyes. The shield rested firmly on her arm, glowing with steady light. He stepped beside her. "Rhina, you look like a whole different person." She shook her head gently. "No, I finally look like myself." The chamber doors shook violently. The enemy was trying to break in. The pilot stood ready. "They're coming." Rhina stepped forward. Shield raised. "Let them." The stone wall cracked. A blast tore it open. Enemy soldiers stormed in, and Rhina moved. Her shield lit the entire chamber. The first enemy shot hit the shield. Instead of breaking, the shield absorbed the energy, then redirected it in a brilliant arc, knocking the attackers backward. He stared, stunned. "Rhina, that was—" Rhina lowered the shield, her voice calm and steady. "This is what I should have done from the beginning." She charged forward. The enemies fired again, but the shield deflected every blast. Light burst with each impact. Rhina's movements, once hesitant and unsure, now flowed with purpose. She struck with precision, protected the others instinctively, and moved like someone born to lead. The enemy fell one by one. When the last soldier collapsed, silence filled the chamber again. Rhina lowered the shield slowly. The glow softened. He stepped to her side. "Rhina, you saved us." The pilot nodded. Captain Arlen would be proud. Rhina closed her eyes briefly. I hope so. The glowing figure spoke again. You have accepted your path. The shield is yours. The legacy continues. The chamber lights dimmed and the figure faded away. The ancient machines powered down. Leaving only a soft hum, Rena looked at her shield one last time. Then she turned to her team. Let's go home. They climbed back through the tunnel and stepped into the light of the valley. The sky above the moon was calm again. No enemy ships, no fire. Only the quiet after a long battle dot as they prepared to return to the station. He glanced at Rhina, the girl they once mocked for carrying broken gear. Now walked like someone who carried the strength of two warriors, hers and Captain Arlen's. And when they returned, everyone would finally learn the truth. She was not weak, she was not inexperienced. She was the shield-bearer. And her story had only just begun. The battlefield was silent after the smoke began to fade. The ground still carried the marks of fire, energy bursts, and broken metal. Arya stood in the center of it all, her armor cracked and her breathing slow, but she remained on her feet. The others around her watched in complete silence, trying to understand what had happened. A few hours ago, most of them believed she was not ready for real war. Now she was the one who saved them from a threat that had almost destroyed the entire unit. Arya looked at the sky, where the enemy carrier had been moments ago. There were only scattered flames left now, floating down like dying stars. She felt the weight of everything at once. Her body hurt, her mind felt stretched, and her heart was still racing from the power she had used. The dragon mark on her arm was dim again, no longer burning with light. But she could feel it still awake inside her. Her team slowly walked toward her. None of them knew what to say at first. Even Commander Rel, who rarely showed emotion, looked unsure. He had doubted Arya from the start, not out of cruelty, but because he believed humans were fragile compared to the other species in the Alliance. Seeing her defeat an enemy war machine that no one else could touch changed everything for him. Will finally stepped forward. His voice was soft but carried across the silent field. You saved all of us, he said. We would not be standing here without you. Arya lowered her eyes for a moment, not used to such honest praise. I only did what I had to, she answered quietly. I did not want anyone to die. But Ril shook his head. No, you did more than that. You fought a battle no one else could fight. He looked at the rest of the unit. We misjudged her. Every one of us. Some of the soldiers nodded. Others looked ashamed. A few looked at Arya like they were seeing her for the first time. She had always been quiet, always kept to herself, never tried to show off. They had mistaken her silence for weakness when it was only patience. Yalan, the engineer who had doubted her the most, slowly approached her. His voice was uncertain. Arya, I'm sorry, he said. I said things I should not have. I thought you were inexperienced. I thought you would get someone killed. But I was wrong. You saved me. You saved all of us. Arya gave him a small, tired smile. It is all right, she said. You did not know. I did not know either. Yalan looked confused. You did not know what? Arya looked down at her arm where the dragon mark was faint but still visible. I did not know how strong this was. I did not know what I could do with it. I only knew that I had to try. The others followed her gaze. Some had seen the mark glow during the battle. Others had only heard part of the rumors. No one had understood what it meant until today. Ril cleared his throat. We must return to base. High Command will want a full report. He looked at Arya with a more careful expression than before. And they will want to speak with you in particular. On the way back, Arya walked at the center of the group. The soldiers who used to ignore her now stayed close, almost forming a protective circle around her. She felt embarrassed by the attention, but also strangely grateful. For the first time since joining the Alliance forces, she did not feel alone. The transport ship lifted from the battlefield, carrying them through the clouds toward the main command station. As they flew, Arya looked out the window at the horizon. She wondered why the Dragon Mark had chosen her. There were millions of humans in the galaxy, each with different strengths. She had never considered herself special. When they landed at the main station, officers and analysts were already waiting. They guided Arya to a chamber where High Command often held critical meetings. She walked inside slowly, unsure of what kind of reaction she would receive. The room was filled with high-ranking leaders from different species. Some looked curious. Some looked uneasy. Some looked openly fascinated. They had all seen the combat footage. It had spread across the Alliance network within minutes. Every camera on the battlefield had captured her fight, her energy bursts, her final strike that cut through the enemy carrier's shield. A tall, silver-skinned official stepped forward. His voice echoed softly. "Human Arya," he said, "your actions have shifted the direction of this war. We must speak of your abilities." Arya stood still. "I do not fully understand them myself," she said. "The mark appeared only weeks ago. I thought it was some old family symbol. I did not know it had power." The official exchanged glances with the others. "We have studied many species," he said, "but never have we recorded such a phenomenon in a human. The energy you used, it was not ordinary. It was ancient, possibly older than the Alliance itself." Another commander leaned forward. "Do you feel the power now? Is it still active?" Arya shook her head. "It feels quiet, but it is still there. I can tell." The room grew silent. Everyone understood what that meant. This power was not temporary. It was something that would stay with her. The tall official finally spoke again. "We do not wish to force you, but we must ask, will you continue to fight with us? The war is not over, and your strength may be needed again." Arya looked down for a moment. She remembered the fear she felt, the burning sensation in her arm, the way the world had shaken when the mark activated. She also remembered her friends on the battlefield, the ones she saved, the ones who trusted her by the end. When she raised her head again, her voice was soft but steady. "Yes," she said, "I will fight. Not because of the mark, but because I want to protect the people who stand beside me." The official nodded slowly. "Then you will be recognized not as a trainee, not as a recruit, but as a protector of the Alliance." After the meeting, Arya stepped out into the main hall. Her team was waiting there. Yalan waved awkwardly. Ril gave her a respectful nod. Even some of the newer soldiers smiled when they saw her. Something felt different now. Not just in how others looked at her, but in how she looked at herself. She had come into this war unsure, quiet, and underestimated. But now she walked with calm confidence. She knew she had earned her place. Later that night, Arya stood alone on a balcony overlooking the starfield. The lights of distant stations shone like small clusters of fireflies. She touched her arm, feeling the faint warmth of the dragon mark. "Why me?" she whispered. There was no answer, but the warmth increased slightly, as if the mark could sense her thoughts. She smiled. "Maybe I do not need to know yet," she said. "Maybe I just need to keep moving forward." Behind her, footsteps approached softly. It was Rel. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be busy," Arya nodded. "I know, but I needed a moment to think." Rel stood beside her, looking at the stars. "You have changed more than you realize," he said. "And not because of your power. Because of your heart. That is why the team follows you now." Arya felt a quiet warmth in her chest. "Thank you, Commander." Ril gave a rare small smile. "Get some sleep, Arya. This was only the beginning." As Arya walked back through the hall, she felt the echo of his words. Only the beginning. She did not know what battles would come next. She did not know how powerful the mark would become. But she knew one thing for certain. She would face it all. She would fight. She would protect, and she would show the galaxy that humans should never be underestimated. For the first time, she truly felt like she belonged. And that feeling was stronger than any power the mark could give her. The war would continue, but Arya walked into the future with steady steps, ready for whatever came next.